Today, we're not just going to tell a story, we're going to build it right in your head, piece by piece. We're taking a cinematic journey through one of the most pivotal days in history, using 56 verses as our guide. So let's walk through these final hours together and create a visual story that's pretty much impossible to forget. All right, let's get into it. Our story plays out in 5 acts. We'll start in the halls of power, then move to the judgment of the people, follow the long walk to a hill, witness the dramatic events there, and finally see the quiet moments that, well, changed everything. Let's begin. So where do we start? Well, it begins with a classic political problem, right? You've got this controversial figure, and nobody in charge wants to be the one to deal with him. The stage is set for a high-stakes game of political hot potato. Okay, let's build this scene. Verse 1. The whole assembly gets up and marches Jesus over to Pilate. Just picture this wave of officials escorting one single silent man. Verse 2. The accusations start flying, and you can almost see the speech bubbles popping up. The first one says, misleading the nation. The next, forbidding taxes to Caesar. And the big one, claims to be a king. Verse 3, Pilate just cuts right to the chase. Imagine a close-up on his face as he asks, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus' reply, so simple, "You have said so." Verse 4, Pilate turns back to everyone, holds up his hands like he's stopping traffic, and says, "I find no fault in this man." But check out verse 5. This just makes them angrier. Imagine a volume meter next to the crowd just spiking into the red as they insist he's stirring up trouble everywhere. Now, that last accusation gives Pilate an out. Verse 6. He hears the word Galilee, and you can just imagine a light bulb going off over his head. Verse 7. He realizes, wait, Jesus is Herod's problem, not mine. Picture him just gladly handing off that political hot potato. So Jesus is sent to Herod. Verse 8. Now, this is interesting. Herod is actually thrilled. Picture him rubbing his hands together, hoping he's about to see some kind of miracle, like a private magic show. Verse 9. Herod just starts firing off questions. Imagine a stream of question marks flying from his mouth, but they just dissolve before they even reach Jesus, who says absolutely nothing. Verse 10. Meanwhile, the accusers are still at it. Picture their words like these sharp, angry arrows just flying relentlessly at Jesus. Verse 11. So Herod, getting nowhere, starts mocking him. Picture him and his soldiers dressing Jesus up in this ridiculous flashy robe and just laughing. And all of this leads to the punchline in verse 12. That same day, 2 political enemies, Pilate and Herod, became friends. You can see them shaking hands, totally united by their shared desire to get rid of this problem. Well, the problem is right back in Pilate's lap. He tried passing him off to another ruler. That didn't work. So now he tries a new tactic. He is going to let the people decide. Verse 13, Pilate calls everyone together, the leaders, the people. He's making this a public spectacle now. Verses 14 and 15, he lays out his case. Picture him holding up 2 scrolls. One is labeled My Verdict, the other Herod's Verdict. He unrolls both, and they've each got a big, green, innocent stamp on them. He's done nothing deserving death, he argues. Verse 16, so he offers a compromise, a lesser punishment. Imagine him holding a whip in one hand and pointing to an open door with the other. Verse 17, and here's his ace in the hole. This verse reminds us there was a custom to release one prisoner during the festival. This is Pilate's escape plan. So the choice he presents is just so stark. On one side, you have a man who 2 different rulers have declared innocent. And on the other side, well, as we're about to see, you have Barabbas. Just picture a gritty wanted poster with his face and his crimes listed right below. Insurrection and murder. The choice could not be clearer. Verse 18, the crowd's response? It's instant and it's unified. Picture a single giant speech bubble rising from them all that says, away with this man, release Barabbas. Verse 20, Pilate tries again, leaning over the balcony, trying to reason with them. Verse 21, but their answer is chilling. Imagine the words, crucify him, just erupting from the crowd in huge, jagged red letters. For a third time, Pilate pleads. Why? What evil has he done? But you can picture his words as tiny texts, just completely washed away by that overwhelming crucify chant. Their voices win. Imagine a giant set of scales, and the sound of the crowd's shouting just weighs one side down until it slams on the ground. Pilate gives the sentence. Picture a Roman gavel coming down hard. The choice is made. We see a split screen. On one side, a guard unlocks Barabbas' chains and he walks free. On the other, guards are leading Jesus away to do what the crowd demanded. Okay, let's move to the next scene. The journey to the place of execution. And this isn't some quiet march, it's a public procession, and it's filled with these really powerful, unexpected moments. Verse 26. As they're leading him away, they grab a man out of the crowd. His name is Simon of Cyrene. For our mental picture, let's see this from his point of view. You're Simon. You're just walking in from the country, minding your own business, and suddenly a rough soldier's hand grabs your shoulder. The next thing you know, the splintered, heavy wood of a cross is being forced onto you. Just an ordinary man suddenly caught up in this extraordinary, history-making moment. Verse 27. A huge crowd is following, and it includes women who are just mourning so loudly. Verse 28. But Jesus turns to them, and you can picture the whole chaotic procession going into slow motion as he makes eye contact and speaks right to them. Daughters of Jerusalem, don't weep for me. Weep for yourselves. Verses 29 to 31. His words then paint this prophetic, honestly terrifying picture of a future so bad that people will wish for the mountains to fall on them. Even now, he's more concerned for their fate than his own. Verse 32. Then the camera just pans a little, and you see a key detail. 2 other men, actual criminals, are also being led along to be executed with him. We now arrive at the place they called Calvary, the skull. And this is where the execution unfolds. It's not silent. It's full of dialogue, mockery, and what feels like signs from the heavens themselves. Verse 33. They get there, and they crucify him. Right between the 2 criminals. Just picture that stark image, 3 crosses being raised against the sky. Verse 34. And at this very moment, as it's happening, Jesus speaks. Let's picture this as a split screen. On the top half, a close-up on Jesus' face as he says, "Father, forgive them." And on the bottom half, a close-up of the soldier's hands, casually throwing dice as they gamble for his clothes. The contrast is just staggering. Verse 35, the mockery starts. Picture speech bubbles coming from the rulers watching below. He's saved others, let him save himself. Verse 36, the soldiers join in on the fun. Picture one of them offering him sour wine on a sponge with a taunting grin. Verse 37, their words just echo the rulers. If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. Verse 38, and then comes the official charge. Imagine a close-up on a hammer as it nails a sign above his head, and the sign is written in 3 different languages just so everyone can read the official irony. This is the King of the Jews. Verse 39, the mockery now comes from one of the criminals crucified right beside him. Picture him sneering, "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself at us." Verse 40 and 41, but the other criminal speaks up. Picture him turning his head to the first guy, saying, "We deserve this, but this man has done nothing wrong." Verse 42, then this second criminal turns his eyes to Jesus, and you can picture his words as this quiet, hopeful prayer. "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Verse 43, and Jesus gives this incredible reply. As he says the words, "Today you will be with me in paradise," just imagine a brief shimmering image of a peaceful garden overlaying the whole brutal scene, a promise of peace in a moment of absolute pain. And then it's like the cosmos itself starts to react. It's about noon, the 6th hour, but picture the sun just being rapidly eclipsed, plunging the whole land into a sudden, deep darkness that lasts for 3 hours. Verse 45. Now picture a split screen. On the left, the sun is just a black disk in the sky. And on the right, we're inside the great temple, and that massive, beautiful veil that separates the holiest place is suddenly torn in 2, from top to bottom, by some unseen force. Verse 46. At the height of all that darkness, Jesus cries out his final words. Picture him looking up as he says, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And as he speaks, imagine a gentle light just leaving him and ascending. And with that, he breathes his last. Everything stops. Silence. Verse 47. The silence is broken by the Roman centurion in charge. Picture this hardened soldier, a guy who's probably seen death 100 times, looking up at the cross. And his face just changes, from professional ditty to pure awe, as he says, "Certainly this was a righteous man." Verse 48. And the crowd, the people who came to see a spectacle, they start to leave. Picture them walking away, down the hill, not cheering, but beating their chests in regret. Verse 49. And finally, we see a long shot. Far off in the distance, a small group of his followers, including the women from Galilee, just stand there, watching it all. The public execution is over, but a few quiet, courageous acts are about to set the stage for everything that comes next. Verse 50, we get introduced to Joseph of Arimathea. Now he's a member of the council, a good and just man. Verse 51, and here's the key detail. He had not consented to their decision. You can imagine a quick flashback, seeing him as the one dissenting voice in that room. Verse 52, now this same man does something incredibly brave. Picture him walking right into the Roman headquarters and standing before Pilate himself to formally request the body of Jesus. I mean, that's a huge political and personal risk.
Verse 53, his request is granted. And you can picture this quiet, respectful three-part sequence. First, Joseph carefully taking the body down from the cross. Second, wrapping it in clean linen cloth. And third, laying it inside a brand new tomb carved out of rock, a tomb that had never been used before. Verse 54. And the timing here is crucial. Picture the sun dipping below the horizon. It's the day of preparation, and the Sabbath is just about to begin.
Verse 55. The women from Galilee, they are still there, faithful right to the very end. Picture them following Joseph, watching carefully to see exactly where Jesus is laid. They're memorizing the location. Verse 56. Then they leave, and you can picture them in a quiet room preparing spices and fragrant oils for a proper burial. But they pause, setting the spices down to honor the Sabbath commandment. Their grief is active, you know? They're already planning their next act of devotion. And that's the final frame of our story for today. A sealed tomb, a day of mandated rest, and a few faithful women waiting. We've walked through 56 moments of political maneuvering, mob justice, and brutal execution, and it all ends right here. So the question that just hangs in the air is this: why did this absolute definitive ending become one of the most famous new beginnings in all of human history?